Big Ten perception hurting two teams not named Ohio State. MarkRogersTV on Michigan State and Wisconsin. We believe that the Badgers and the Spartans are undervalued in the rankings. Let's first make the case for Michigan State. The Spartans are 9-1. They're undefeated in the Big Ten. So we go back to their non-conference loss at Notre Dame, losing to the Irish 17-13. Notre Dame's not a great football team. They're not a really good football team. They're a fringe top 25 program right now. Maybe top 30, something in that range. They've got a loss against Pitt, Michigan, and against Oklahoma. The Pitt loss is a really bad one for Notre Dame. Again, 7-3 pretty much tells you what you need to know about the Irish. They're decent. Michigan State did lose to Notre Dame on the road, 17-13. That was a game that included 6 pass interference calls against Michigan State, all leading to Notre Dame scores. If you watched the football game, there were 2 or 3 decent calls that were questionable pass interference calls. The other 3 or so were complete phantom calls against Michigan State. The Michigan State defense made a number of stops, but then had to try to make another stop and then sometimes a third stop, which led to a Notre Dame score. So that being said, the officials didn't do the best job, but Michigan State did lose the football game at Notre Dame. They also did not have their current quarterback, Connor Cook, on the field for the final drive. Mark D'Antonio went back to his 2012 starter, senior Andrew Maxwell, for the final drive. Maxwell has proven himself not to be a big-time number 1 quarterback in a league like the Big Ten. Still, D'Antonio put him in, and Maxwell missed on 3 consecutive attempts when Connor Cook was the guy that had played the entire football game. Cook led the game-winning drive as a freshman in the Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl against TCU, and he said after the game, "I would have led the game-winning drive again." Now, we don't know that, but again, Connor Cook out of the game, and D'Antonio is an excellent football coach, but he made a mistake in this game. Michigan State loses against Notre Dame 17-13. Okay, what's different about Michigan State right now versus that team that took on Notre Dame in September is the passing game. No, it's not explosive. It's not Baylor or Oregon. So don't get the Spartan green mixed up with the Baylor green or the Oregon green. That's all they've got in common in regards to passing offense. It's still more efficient than explosive, but at least it's efficient. Connor Cook has now thrown for over 200 yards 5 times in 8 games. Compare that to Andrew Maxwell, the senior we talked about, who did it just twice in Sparty's last 7 games of 2012. More importantly than that, Connor Cook has 14 touchdown passes and just 3 interceptions. Andrew Maxwell's TD to pick ratio was 13-9. So there's much more efficiency coming out of the passing game. The wide receivers are hanging onto the football. If you've seen my video post here on MarkRogersTV, I tore the Michigan State wide receivers to shreds the entire season of 2012 into the offseason because these guys did not catch the football. Tony Lippett, McGarrett Kings Jr., Aaron Burbidge last season did not hang on to the football. Keith Mumphrey, they all dropped it. They did not make explosive plays in the passing game. Still not making a ton of them, but again, Michigan State's passing game has come lengths in the past few months to become doable, to become capable in the passing game. And again, you look at the stats, 6 more percentage points on the completion percentage, 14-3 TD pick ratio to 13-9 last season. Michigan State's capable in the passing game. Okay, the running game was a running back by committee with Le'Veon Bell moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they didn't have much clue as to who was going to run the football in August. Jeremy Langford, though, has turned out to be the go-to workhorse guy out of the backfield. And that's what Mark D'Antonio likes. He doesn't like the running back by committee. He likes to have that one main guy that he can send to the line of scrimmage 30 to 35 times. Or in Langford's case, 32 times against Nebraska last Saturday for 151 yards. Langford now has 5 consecutive 100-yard efforts and 13 rushing touchdowns this season. Not a great back, very good, capable back, behind a very improving offensive line. So the offense is decent. It's not going to be great this season by any stretch. The defense is possibly great. Statistically, it is great. Number 1 in rushing defense at 57 yards allowed per game. number 1 in total defense, giving up just 2.1 yards per rushing attempt, and they are 4th in the country in scoring defense at 13 plus per game. Are they a great defense? Well, I want to see them play Ohio State in particular and a quality opponent in the bowl game. They've got Minnesota, they've got Northwestern to finish off the season. Nebraska and Michigan certainly weren't the offensive challenges we imagined they would be back in August or September, and Michigan State does not play Wisconsin. That would be a great matchup. So Michigan State's undervalued, and we brought up Wisconsin, the Badgers as well. They are 8-2 on the record, but we all know what happened at Arizona State for this Wisconsin team. They had the ball in play. Joel Stabby, their sophomore quarterback, set it down for the refs to stop the clock and allow them to kick the game-winning field goal. It didn't happen. We don't know if Wisconsin would have made the field goal or missed the field goal. Just throw that game out. So that's one loss right there in the desert. Give them credit for a 32-30 effort at Arizona State against the Sun Devils team that currently is 8-2 and probably going to make it to the Pac-12 championship game. And they played that game at night in the desert on the road. At the same time, the other loss is to third-ranked Ohio State, and regardless of what you think of the Buckeyes' schedule, we know that this is one of the most talented teams in the country, a legitimate top 5 team, if not number 1, 2, or 3. Ohio State on the road, and Wisconsin got within 31-24. Hard-fought game, stayed within a score or two the entire night. Wisconsin, and we ask this of our BCS teams, is dominating people. The last example of that, the most recent, last Saturday against Indiana, winning 51-3. And again, Indiana is not a really good football team. But offensively, Indiana is scoring against everybody, including a number 7 Missouri team, 28 points. But against Wisconsin, 3 points, 51-3 bashing. And Wisconsin on the ground, again, is as good as anybody in the country. 308 yards rushing per game, 554 against Indiana. Melvin Gordon and James White can go in a hurry. They've got the road graders up front, but not necessarily the road graders in the backfield, because those guys are fleet running backs. They both have already rushed for 1,000 yards this season, 24 rushing touchdowns between Gordon and White. And Gordon's rushing average, you've got to look at the stat sheet twice to get it right, at 8.4 yards per carry. Okay, much like Michigan State, Wisconsin, a bit limited in the passing game, as they typically are. Stabby's thrown 16 touchdowns. He's got 8 picks. He's improved. He's just a sophomore, so there are good things which most likely lie ahead for this Wisconsin offense, as Coach Gary Anderson has said in coming in from Utah State, that he wants a more explosive passing game in the future, but he's going to have to recruit for it, and he's going to have to call plays for it. But he knows where his talent and his personnel and his beef lies right now, and he's going to continue to put the game in the hands of the running game. But Stabby's done some good things in the air. Again, 16 touchdown passes. That's quite a few for a Wisconsin quarterback not named Russell Wilson. Issues here in the passing game is that Jared Abbrederis, who's seemingly been at Wisconsin forever, has 54 receptions. No other Wisconsin wide receiver has 9 receptions. Jacob Pedersen, the tight end, has 27. So they are very one-dimensional, period. And then even in the passing game, one-dimensional, that they're looking for Abbrederis all the time. So it would be good if Wisconsin could somehow develop a second or third option in the passing game, specifically at wide receiver, as they close out the season. So the Badgers, with one loss in the Big Ten at Ohio State, 31-24, and the one phantom loss at Arizona State, they are 8-2. They just broke into the rankings last week. And if you count this week's poll, 2 weeks ago. That's ridiculous. Wisconsin is one of the top 10 to 12 to 15 teams in the country. They are currently ranked at 19th. Michigan State, with their resume, with their dominance on defense, they should be ranked in the top 7 or 8 in the country with the one loss. Consider that Stanford had one loss a few weeks ago. We were giving them a mulligan, a do-over practically, with that Utah loss. The Utah Utes are 1-6 in the Pac-12, but we were completely dismissing that loss by Stanford. Then they lose to another unranked team, and granted, USC is a very talented team on the front line, but they've got depth issues, they've got quarterback issues, and they're playing better football these days. But Stanford loses to another unranked team, and the Stanford Cardinal only drop with a second loss from 5th to 10th. We like Michigan State up in that top 8 to 9 range, and Wisconsin right behind them in the top 15 because the second loss is very, very questionable. All right, college football fans, would love to hear what you have to say about Wisconsin and Michigan State. Am I right or am I dead wrong? Let us know right here on Mark Rogers TV.